Welcome back to Rio Grande Perspectives for Part B. If you didn't see Part A, I recommend watching that because this might not make as much sense. I have some time constraints where I need to make these videos 20 minutes or less. So anyways, we left off where I was describing my prayer to God, where I wanted to know the truth, whatever the cost. And I put that in my prayer, and I totally meant it in my heart. And I prayed that if God would show me that Judaism is the truth, then I would truly go to Judaism. And if God showed me that Islam is the truth, then I would go to Islam. I didn't have any hang-ups or reservations about these things. I just wanted the truth. And I told him, if the Trinity is true, and that's what Christianity really teaches, and that's what you are teaching me, then please give me the understanding about it. And that was my prayer. And with that, I began my Bible study. I started with Genesis 1:1, from the very first verse of the Bible, all the way to the very last verse of the book of Revelation. And I looked meticulously for everything I could find in that Bible that would inform me as to the truth about God, whether he is a single unitary God or a Trinity. And also regarding the truth about Jesus. Is Jesus God? Is he an angel? Is he a human being? Who is Jesus? Is he part of God? I looked for everything that could shed light on this. And it didn't take long for me to see that you go throughout the Old Testament for sure, and God is a single, solitary God. He uses the first person singular pronoun. The verbs are singular verbs. And aside from that, there are just so many places where he emphatically describes himself as unique, as having nobody else like him, nobody to equal him, nobody to compare to him, nobody that holds any sway with him, that he alone holds all the cards. He created everything. He upholds everything all by himself. All by himself. And there's nobody on his level, nobody on his rank. And I continued with the study, got into the New Testament, and it seemed very clear to me that Jesus is subordinate to God, that he is not God himself, but he has to listen to what God tells him to do. He has to put his own will aside. He prays to God. He worships God. And he, not only that, he affirms key things in Jewish theology, as we got into with our first video, where it makes clear that if somebody had a theology that was not Jewish, they're venturing far away from what Jesus had to say. So I got through and I said, well, here I have, we could look at it like a scale. On one side of the scale, on one of those plates, we have hundreds and hundreds of pounds, representing literally tens of thousands of verses. Tens of thousands of verses where God is clearly a singular being. Nowhere does it say three. Nowhere does it say Trinity. Nowhere does it describe God as a multiplicity of persons. And even then, I did think that on that other tray on the other side of the scale, that there were perhaps 4 or 5, maybe we could say 6 verses that they seem to imply some sort of divine, they seem to imply some sort of divine thing going on with Jesus. But, they certainly also do not say anything like Trinity or triune or anything like that. And it just was clear to me that in time I would find out how those verses would naturally conform to the, as I said, thousands of other verses in the Bible. You don't simply say, well, we're going to make the the sun isn't going to revolve around the moon. The moon is, a tiny body, and the sun is, incomparably larger, and that's how gravity works. In a Bible study, you don't interpret clear verses, especially a supermajority of clear verses, by inferences or, uncertain interpretations of a tiny minority of verses. Obviously, the healthy way to study the Bible is to interpret the minority, unclear verses in terms of the clear, overwhelming majority. That was apparent to me even back then. And so even then, as I said 23 years ago, I couldn't tell you what to make of, probably John 1. I don't remember which ones exactly it was, but, let's say John 1 or Philippians 2. Okay, I didn't know what to do with those right then, but it was clear to me that everything else, even in just the New Testament, everything else in the New Testament, it was clear that the Trinity was foreign. Like, there was no way that you could read this as somebody unchurched and say, oh yeah, of course, there's a Trinity. It's obvious. No, not at all. In fact, the opposite is what was obvious. And so I was comfortable with those verses coming to terms with the majority. And of course, with time they did. I've read into it more, and I saw what different scholars had to say about some of these things. And I have to tell you, when I found the way to look at, as I said, this 4, 5, maybe 6 verses in a way that would conform to the majority of the Bible, I had the satisfaction not only of saying, well, at least there is an internal harmony now, but I also found that the Unitarian explanations for these 4 or 5 or 6 verses, whatever it was, ended up making a much more compelling picture. So it wasn't like there was just some cold, sterile mathematical agreement to it all, but there was an increase in the richness of the meaning. Now, over time, God willing, we'll get into some of these verses. I also don't think it's a good idea to just spoon feed, because that's part of your walk with God. You have to seek these things out. I will leave some links to some very useful resources done by Unitarian Christians. But although I'm going to leave these links, I really implore you, for your own good, use them as a last resort. I think it's so much more valuable to put in your best effort. Think about it first. Don't just, it's like any other course that you might take. Do your homework. Don't just flip to the back of the book and get the answers, because there's a great reward in seeking those things out, which we see many times in the Bible. That it's an honor that God gives us, that He bestows upon us the blessing of being able to dig into things and have that satisfaction of discovery, of learning. So don't run to those things, but have it as a resource if you really get stumped on 1 or 2 of them. And I promise you'll feel really blessed doing that search for yourself. That being said, I think, God willing, over time, I would like to, excuse me, I would like to look at some of these these verses that people are often left with, maybe like the John 1 or the Philippians 2 or Colossians 1. Not that other people haven't. You can find great things already online in abundance, actually. But we might get into them. But I also don't want the channel to just be focused on, Trinitarian or anti-Trinitarian polemics. I don't want it to just devolve into that. So, we might do batches of those, but I don't want to have a constant focus on that. Something I wanted to bring up that I mentioned in the part A of this video is what I've called the Abraham Challenge. The reason I call it that is because Abraham ends up getting this very, very exalted title in the Bible, where he's called the friend of God. And, that didn't just fall into his lap. He got that because he was willing to leave everything. He left his father, he left his homeland, he left his family. He ventured into the unknown because that was God's calling to him. He did have that place where that place in his life experience where he didn't have any of this external pressure from his society, from his acquaintances or his friends to conform to what everybody else was doing. He was free to follow God. And that sounds nice, but it's not easy. Most of us, as the experiments by Solomon Asch show us, most of us will have an extremely difficult time consistently being willing to disagree with the majority and to follow what we know is right. These things come at a price. Some people have paid dearly. There have been Unitarian Christians like Michael Servetus and quite a few others that were put to death by Trinitarian Christians. And we have it easy now, but that hasn't always been the case. As I've mentioned in the first video, there were Jews put to death by Trinitarian Christians, by the church. And one of the things that they carried with them to their death was their unflinching commitment to monotheism. As I said before, the very last words on the lips of these martyrs was Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. This was their creed in the face of execution, and this was their words of witness and martyrdom, dying for the unity of God at the hands of misguided idolaters. And I don't know about you, but my Bible tells me that tough times are guaranteed for the future. And really, we have to be willing to cling to the truth no matter what. And this is the key truth. This is the most important thing. As Jesus said, it is the greatest commandment. Not merely to love God supremely, but to do so fully knowing and proclaiming the unity of God as against any other competing idea, philosophy, or theology. So to tie this back to Abraham, he was willing to lose everything. And the Abraham challenge is just that. Instead of arguing about, well, maybe this verse means that, or you should just, I really hope you accept Jesus as God, so you'll be saved. or things of this nature. No. Here is the real thing on the menu. My invitation, my challenge in a friendly way is for you to do what other people have done and put everything on the line. Don't care about what your mom and dad will say. Don't care about what your kids will say, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles. Find that place in your heart where you are really ready to go wherever it leads. And put yourself fully into that prayer and tell God, promise Him that you will go wherever He leads. If that is Judaism, then go to Judaism. If it's Islam, go to Islam. If it's Christianity, find out how that works. Is tritheistic or triune Christianity the truth? Is that what God set up? Or is Unitarian Christianity the true Christianity? Is the Bible as Christians know it really teaching us to say that God is a triune being? Or is the Bible that Christians have a message from God that maintains that truth that has always been true, that God is a unitary being? Put it in God's hands. Don't just say, well, I've always felt this, or, this is the way my path has been led by God. Maybe so many things about your path are really led by God, but have you brought up this with God? You said, God, I want to check this out. Is this the truth? And you put it all in His hands. That's what the Abraham Challenge is about. That's inviting you to put that in God's hands. Put that on God's altar and see if He puts it back in your lap or if He changes your life. That's all. If you're right that Jesus is God, or that God is a triune being, then you should trust that you will be led right back to what you believed. And if you're hesitating, why? Are you hesitating because there is that part in you, that fitra that I described earlier, that innate orientation that is built into us by God that tells you, nope, something about this just isn't right. Jesus said, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. And Jeremiah said, as God's spokesperson, speaking for God, he said, you will seek me and you will find me when you search for me with all your heart. You have to put everything that you love and is dear to you up into God's hands and see where things go. We all have to do that. And even if we've done it once in our life, we're going to find ourselves in places like that again, so we might as well just get used to that and be okay with doing that as often as needed. I'd like to end this with an observation that I've had. For those of you who have read George Orwell's 1984, we see that the protagonist, Winston Smith, when he's brought into the government's torture program and his soul is broken, the thing that they get him to say that sort of seals the deal that he's a broken man is to make him say that 2 + 2 = 5. And this is one of the, most grotesque scenes in the book that is full of, plenty of grotesque scenes, but to really see the brokenness of this man, where he can go against basic common sense because he's had his heart crushed, he's had his mind broken, and they've gotten him to say, okay, 2 + 2 is 5, and I love Big Brother. I find there's something chillingly similar in saying that 1 + 1 + 1 is 1. It's another case of somebody being crippled by their fear of all kinds of things, their fear of other people's opinions, by their fear of not going with the flow, by their fear of losing the world. And if we stay in that fear, If we cling to the world, Jesus said, that's how you lose your soul. I pray that if you're watching this video, and I really mean that, I pray that if you're watching this video, that it's doing good things for you, and it's giving you good things to think about, to ponder. May God bless you and guide you, and may He grant us all peace and guidance. I hope to see you next time. Be well.